Hello, you're watching TelecomTV's Spotlight on 5G series. Time now for our strategy outlook discussion on 5G cloud. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content for TelecomTV. And based on our editorial coverage of the sector, we've identified the key areas generating the most interest and that could impact the strategic choices of telcos and their partners. For example, are the economics of using the public cloud for 5G fully understood? And what specific 5G apps are best hosted in the public cloud? Well, let's find out what our guests think. And joining us on the program today are Beth Cohen, SDN Product Strategies at Verizon, Claus Pedersen, Vice President of the Communication Technology Group at Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and Francis Haysom, Principal Analyst with Appledore Research. Hello, everyone. Good to see you all. Thanks for taking part in our discussion today. Let me start by looking at examples of possible disruptive strategies, alternatives to the tried and tested way of doing business. And I'd like to cite Dish in the US. Is Dish showing us the future of 5G in the cloud? And Francis, let me ask that question to you first.
I think Dish is giving us two messages, one of which is there's definitely the ambition, and I think there are some very exciting things that the sort of direction that Dish is going on will enable, fundamentally driven by this idea of hyperscale and enabling that hyperscale in telco. The challenge, I think we need to separate out two things, one of which is the ambition, which I think does take telco in a very different way, and the execution, which we all know is delayed, etc. But I think we also need with the execution to be somewhat critically aware that these things do take time and making lots of vendors work together in the public cloud, on the public cloud, is a new approach. We will learn from this, but I think the ambition is there, and I think it does point the direction for the industry.
Thanks, Francis. And Beth, it's very early days, but is this possibly showing us the future of 5G in the cloud?
I think there's some truth to that. In the US, Verizon just rolled out fixed wireless access to potentially 90 million customers. And we had a giant Super Bowl ad. I don't know about it. And, obviously that's consumer oriented, but there's also a push to businesses. And since the cloud is running all those applications behind the scenes, we're seeing a revolution in how people and companies are consuming their applications. Applications have been moving to the cloud for a while, but now that we've added this new 5G to the mix, the jury's still out, but I feel comfortable that it's going to be a success, and it will allow people to do new things in new ways. We're integrating the cloud with the 5G networks.
Thank you, Beth. Claus, if I could just come over to you and introduce you in the program now. We are seeing a move, especially with 5G, to explore and exploit some of the capabilities of the cloud. Do you think examples such as Dish that we're talking about now, do you think they could possibly point the way as to what the future might have in store?
Well, I think that what we learned in NFV as the networks were being modernized, and now to what we see with Dish, that there'll be different. There's not the same model fits everybody. Dish has a specific set of advantages in deploying the public cloud environment for their network, and I think we will definitely see there's determination to make it a success. I'm sure it'll work over time. It's a challenging one. But it depends a lot as an operator. What are the choice points you want to maintain in how you build and manage your networks? Because there's implication of using the public cloud, whereas before you had more influence on the infrastructure, you're willing to give that up, maybe that influence on the innovation in return for the scale that a public cloud provider can bring to effectively the infrastructure that will run your cloud. So there's no one size fits all here. And I think you have, as an operator, to look very carefully at what are the differentiation you want to bring to your customers, what are the class of application, enterprise versus consumer, etc., and that will determine whether this is the right model for you.
Great, thank you, Klaus. And Francis, let's head back over to you for some additional comments.
I think one of the important things when you're talking about the likes of Dish and Rakuten is the obviously other example is you're as much talking about a change of technology and the use of hyperscale, but you're also talking about a change of culture in terms of how that is used, etc. So I think we need to understand that it's quite a difficult journey. It's not just simply using the public cloud and it all works. It's changing a very fundamental operational and to some extent financial model.
Thanks, Francis. As you say, time will tell. I'm sure they'll have plenty of challenges on the road ahead. But let's focus now on the here and now, which is probably far more important. Are there any specific 5G applications that are best hosted in the public cloud right now? Beth, let's start off with you.
Sure. So from what I've seen, the most promising applications that are hosted in public cloud with 5G are the MEC applications, specifically IoT type applications. The characteristics are applications where there's highly distributed data collection and there's need for massive analytics around that data. So traffic patterns, smart city type applications, anything where the data is generated at the edge, but it needs to be processed centrally. And so, that gets into the cloud edge type hybrid applications. But I think that's where it's going. And that's where the hyperscalers can really deliver what they're really good at, which is massive amounts of compute and storage and processing power to really devote to these types of applications.
Yeah, as you say, Beth, hyperscale compute and storage there on offer from the hyperscalers. Klaus, from your perspective at HPE, what are you seeing? Any specific applications, 5G apps that are best hosted in the public cloud today?
No, I think, again, where the hyperscalers can bring scale to the computational problem, like what was just being used as examples. But again, I think, one of the characteristics is the less specialization you need and heterogeneity you need in the infrastructure, the better you are for the applications. That drives towards more standardized applications, more IT-like applications, if you will, for the move to the cloud. Obviously, the hyperscalers are bringing a very rich ecosystem of developers. And as those applications are of relevance to the enterprise customers of the carriers, those become the natural targets. Then there's a whole discussion around which part of the core network applications themselves, the supporting applications, OSS, BSS, can also be moved to the public cloud. And we see a great variety in terms of what various telcos are planning to do there, also depending on data sovereignty and other issues that need to be dealt with at a very local level in terms of legislation, etc.
Yeah, good point about the developer ecosystem as well that comes along with this. I'll go back to Beth in a moment, but Francis, let's turn to you first for your thoughts here.
I think one of just in terms of the applications is looking at what telcos they provide anyway and the opportunity to be much more, agile with customers. We're seeing a lot of interest in the idea of using the public cloud as a vehicle in which you can do a lot more. You can take a lot of the stuff that has typically been in the lab to date, because things have become software. You can start to emulate, simulate, and to a degree do digital twins of things. And you can work with other enterprises in terms of effectively putting trial networks that you can try ideas that you can use 5G. And a good example of that was recent work we did with working with Spirent, where they're working with transport networks to see that basically to make the case for using 5G in transport networks as against other technologies that transport network could do by using emulation. And public cloud can bring that emulation at scale.
Oh, that's interesting. Thanks for bringing that one up, Francis. And Beth, as promised, back over to you.
So I had two additional thoughts about this. One is the hyperscalers are really good at elasticity, right? So that's what a lot of customers use the fact that you can spin up a whole bunch of resources for a short period of time to do some heavy duty processing, and then you spin it down again. So as Francis mentioned, it's great for testing environments and testing really large scale type systems. But that being said, the telco infrastructure tends to be far less elastic. All the network traffic, it moves around, but it's pretty steady in its the resources that are needed to support it. So the telco resources themselves, it's a business model decision rather than a technology model to move the infrastructure into the hyperscalers. But for customers, that makes a whole lot more sense to marry the telco infrastructure to support 5G with the hyperscalers.
All right, thanks very much, Beth. Francis, let's go over to you again for another comment on this one, because this is certainly of massive interest.
I think Beth makes a really good point there that telco today is, to a large degree, it's a very stable and static network. I think again, it's about the change in ambition for telcos. Is that if telcos truly want to participate in dynamic, moving connectivity, then the opportunity that the hyperscalers, the public cloud, give for you to move loads around gives the opportunity potentially for telcos to do more innovative, more changeable networks than they do currently at the moment. So again, it's more about a business case here. We use that as an opportunity to drive agility in the network and therefore get a higher value business.
Thanks, Francis. And you spoke there of opportunities and options. Leads me on to my next question. The public cloud is by no means a free option. There's a cost, obviously, to everything. And we've been reporting on a growing number of concerns about costs in this domain. Are the economics of using the public cloud for 5G fully understood? Beth, let me start by asking you first. I'll come to you for this one.
Absolutely not. The jury is still out. I do know that the telcos have dabbled in using the hyperscalers and for their workloads. I wouldn't say that it has been. It's certainly not full on in, and let's not forget the telcos all have existing infrastructure that's it's cloud-based infrastructure. We're all using OpenStack and have been for years. So are the economics to move to a hyperscaler when we're already building out data centers that are comparable in size? I don't personally see the margin stacking working. But again, jury's still out.
Thanks, Beth. Klaus, let me ask you the same question. Are the economics of using the public cloud for 5G fully understood yet?
Well, let me go back in time and say, the adoption of the principles of NFV, when different companies chose to go down that route, the financial evaluation of it was only part of it, right? It's also about the speed of innovation, the choice of vendors that you get in a more open ecosystem, etc. So I don't think there is you can't make a pure economic dimensioning that then says whether it's right or to pick the cloud or not for deployment of certain workloads. It really depends on many different dimensions. One is if you choose the public cloud, you're defining an environment where there's a lot less variability, a lot less influence on the infrastructure that would actually deliver your choice. So there'll be less competition. You're moving more back towards a uniform environment by one or two vendors, and then every application has to run in that environment. That has big economic implications for how you do and buy the components of your network. Then there's the issue of innovation. If you value innovation at the lower levels of the stack and you have the R&D capacity to decide, make strategic choices, in that domain. If you look at what's going on with vRAN at the moment, the look aside versus inline acceleration, what are you going to use where, etc. But if you have to rely on a software stack that defines, okay, this is how you do vRAN processing, and that works for you, then the public cloud will be great, right? And then there's a whole innovation in terms of where do you want your ecosystem to be most active, the speed of innovation, right? Because again, today, if we look at it, Hewlett Packard Enterprise that I represent here, we're an integrator of server technologies. We take componentry from a lot of different people and build telco workload optimized platforms that are fully open platforms, work with vendors like Red Hat, VMware, and Google Anthos and Azure. It can all run on our servers, but it becomes a choice of the operator what the stack should look like. And that can deliver some benefit. And that secures that the competition at each of the layers can be brought up and benefit the operator if they can take advantage of it. I think, we're getting questions every day on the economical viability of virtual RAN versus, the traditional model. And again, I think it depends a lot how you value the flexibility and, again, the bringing in faster innovation in the future versus the immediate acquisition cost. So all those same questions will be there, and there'll be a little bit of a leap of faith if you jump into the public cloud with your network. That's for sure.
Thanks, Klaus. Francis, it does seem an incredibly complex situation to fully understand the economics of making such a move.
In a way, I'd actually make the counter argument. I think the economics of public cloud is actually very simple. We did an exercise to do with the benefits of edge computing, and really public cloud really comes down to an easy ability to use capability and to scale. But fundamentally what they are doing is they are at the end of the day running data centers. They're providing storage, they're providing compute, they're providing software on top of that, and they're providing that at scale. And the two things that they are really making a big effort there is to reduce the operational cost of running those data centers in terms of both people, but probably more importantly, the whole power concept. And they are massively increasing the opportunity for multi-tenancy, i.e. you can use a compute resource at or near 90% rather than a typical server in a enterprise, which would be probably down at sort of like 20, 25, 30% utilization. So I think the economics of the base thing that the public cloud is giving you are actually very, very clear. Can you run your compute and your storage at a lower price point than they can? The second thing really comes, so if telco is really using its compute at a high resource, that probably doesn't come in that heavily. But when it comes to agility and scale, then that's a big change, because they have global scale. They can move loads around in a way that potentially a specific data center can't be. So I think the economics are actually very, very simple. It's simply the public cloud. It's hyperscale. It has low operational cost, and it has high degrees of multi-tenancy.
Thanks, Francis. But, there are many other factors at play here than just cost, which brings me on to my next question. For example, are security and reliability concerns still holding back the uptake of public cloud for 5G function hosting? Beth, perhaps I could just get your thoughts on security and reliability, perhaps.
I have two thoughts about it. Reliability, I don't think is an issue. Public cloud, setting aside some recent hiccups with some of the hyperscalers over the last couple months, it is generally considered reliable. What we see is there's still a reluctance, and this applies to our customers as well as internally, to really trust that the hyperscaler is truly secure. I can't tell you how many of our customers just stick security right in front of the of all of their applications sitting in the hyperscalers, and I have to admit we do that as well. So there is still definitely a feeling that they're not. If you can't control it, you can't really trust it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens as the whole SASE thing, which is only peripherally related to 5G, but but the concept of integrating the network with security, which is, in my opinion, long overdue. I'm wondering how that will change the perceptions, because SASE includes a whole lot of wrappers that are focused specifically on cloud and cloud applications, and integrating the hyperscalers and multi-cloud, because that's another thing that is that most companies, particularly larger companies, don't want to put all their eggs in one basket, and they do want to spread the good news with across multiple hyperscalers, which adds complexity. It adds potential security issues, and possibly reduces reliability issues, or possibly heightens it. Again, jury's still out on exactly the parameters that need to be considered.
Sure, yes, and I feel we're going to hear a lot more about SASE in the near future. Claus, from where you sit, do you hear concerns from your partners and customers about 5G function hosting in the cloud related to, say, security and trust?
Well, yeah, but we hear the same thing when you start moving workloads onto open computer systems from proprietary systems. So in some sense, I think there's a trade-off there with what hyperscalers does is, with the scale they do and the uniformity of the infrastructure they provide, you're putting more eggs in one basket, but you're probably also reducing the number of vulnerabilities that you're subject to, right? So again, there's no immediate answer to this one. I think over time, the security of the public cloud, just out of necessity, when we look at how much of the world economy is dependent on those infrastructures actually working, that just like the reliability side of it, it's gonna be sorted, but it doesn't mean that it's fully secure. Just like we can't build a telco network that's fully secure now. The DU function sitting out there on an open system is becoming a potential point of attack, and that's a risk too. So security is just something we have to consider in everything we do every day.
Great, thanks, Claus. And as you say, moving workloads anywhere always brings up concerns and risks. Francis, what thoughts do you have?
Claus makes the key point, which is that we run most of the global economy on public cloud these days, so the security has to be extremely strong there. So I think that, again, it's a culture issue with that we're used to being within a boundary in terms of having a boundary around what is telco and what is the rest of the world. That's breaking down anyway. To some extent, you've got to provide security in depth across everything that you do, and public cloud is a part of that. And I think the third thing, again, it's a cultural thing, is the difference between do I trust something and do I control something? To some extent, everything we do, particularly as we increasingly try to use 5G to integrate with lots of other areas, that idea of us on our own securing just what we do and controlling it actually really does start to break down. The security of an application is not just about the connectivity provided by a telco, it's about the end-to-end application, and that will have public cloud elements, whether they're supporting the telco themselves.
Thanks, Francis. Well, let's get some additional comments from Beth.
So I wanted to pick up on some of what Francis said, which is that, when we move this infrastructure into public cloud, it's changing the dynamics of the responsibility matrix, right? So the telco is giving up some responsibility for that security to the cloud vendor who's providing that infrastructure. So to a certain extent, we have to trust that the hyperscaler has in fact put in all the security that we like to see. And yeah, we can put firewalls and other parameters around it, but fundamentally, there's still a split in responsibilities that is something that I think the telcos have trouble wrapping their heads around. And yeah, I think we'll get there. But that's going to, telcos tend to be very risk averse, particularly around security for obvious reasons. And so, understanding how we are no longer fully in control is something that it's going to take a little while for us to get comfortable with.
All right, well, thank you everybody for that. Let's move on, because I'd like to ask the question, if the public cloud model is so good, then why aren't we seeing more pure cloud-based 5G digital services providers? Now, here at TelecomTV, we reported on a number of examples, like Orange Poland, for instance, but they are relatively few and far between. Francis, do you have any thoughts about why we might not be seeing this deluge of 5G DSPs?
I one believe that it's coming, but I think the major issue is not technology; it's culture, and to a degree that's both operational culture, but it's also financial culture. The public cloud is very much an operational model and consume as a service model. Most telcos still are fundamentally based around a capex expenditure and amortization model in terms of the way that they consume everything, even if it is software at the moment. And certainly in terms of an operational model, our operational model is very much built around the concept of boxes, connectivity between boxes, and cloud is a very, very, what the public cloud actually enables you to do is potentially completely decouple major parts of that from where a function can move around the network depending on where it's best placed to be. So that's a very different IT cloud culture within operations, and that takes time to change. There's a lot of embedded. You can call it baggage, but you can also call it a lot of knowledge based around the way existing box connectivity network work. And it takes a long time to change that and to change the operational model. So I think a lot of it is, as I say, to do with culture. But I think it will come. And key vendors, we talked about Dish earlier, and Rakuten, etc. I think if they truly succeed against their ambition, then there becomes a kind of you have to make the change.
Okay, thanks, Francis. Well, maybe we are a little bit early on this question, so we'll park that one and review next year on the programme and see how far we've come along. Beth, over to you for some thoughts.
Yeah, I just wanted to add some thoughts to that because I think, fundamentally the cloud model is a centralized model. It's a hub and spoke model. Which means that, they have their centralized data centers where they're highly efficient, et cetera. And there's, 50 or 100 or however many around the globe. They tend to be in cities or, in hotspots where there's a lot of population that can serve. And the telcos, our model is much more distributed, and we struggle to service those outlying areas, so I would say that the telco model is closer to being a mesh model, and I think to take advantage of the hyperscalers model, we need to make sure that the mesh model and the hub and spoke models actually work together, and I think that's still, again, a work in progress.
All right, thanks, Beth. And Klaus, what are your views here?
Well, I think Francis is right. It's not a technology thing so much as the culture and the financial models. We've seen great success with the HP GreenLake program in telco, where fundamentally we're offering, if you will, the financial models, the pay-per-use, the elasticity in terms of pre-deploying equipment, but leaving it within the existing operational model to a large extent that the operators are used to. So you get the benefit of the public cloud, but in your data centers, on your premises, if you want, HP can run it for you as well if you want. So I think it's a gradual adoption where the way that things are being measured, executed, the operational models all have to adapt to these more modern ways of doing things, and the more modern ways have to prove that they can actually deliver the quality of service and the kind of services that telcos make money out of.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Klaus. Well, thanks for your responses to that question. We've just got time for one more question in today's program. Can telcos use public cloud technology innovation to further their own 5G service portfolios? Do we think that's a viable option, taking the technology that the public cloud is producing themselves and using it themselves? Beth, thoughts from you from an operator's perspective on whether that's an actual option?
I think it is an actual option. I'm thinking along the lines of some of the innovations related to intelligent networking. I think the hyperscalers will be able to play a great role in supporting some real, what I see is fundamentally changing how networks are delivered. Intelligent networking is taking machine learning models and allowing the networks, as we mentioned earlier in the program, become more flexible and deliver the services as they're needed and just-in-time delivery, something that the telcos have not traditionally done because it's difficult to build plant to the last mile. And so now with 5G and the capabilities of just delivering it, last mile is a lot cheaper. I think that there is some opportunities here for some significant innovation, building on the hyperscalers and what they've been doing.
Great, thank you, Beth. Francis, some last thoughts from you.
I think I'd build on Beth's comment, which is that the hyperscale cloud model, I think, gives telcos a huge opportunity to really do this kind of holy grail, which is the on-demand connectivity. The idea that I can literally ask for connectivity and have it delivered. Our problem as an industry has largely been, we've had we always have an access problem. Is there literally a connection there? But I think within the core, there's always still also been a capacity issue. And public cloud could give you that scalability. You can quite literally say, yes, I can scale. I can scale the end-to-end connectivity. I can spin up extra resources at demand. At time of demand and deliver that thing. So I think cloud can truly support telco in being a lot more agile and having a higher value to customers.
Thanks, Francis. And finally, Klaus, can telcos as an option use and try and leverage public cloud technology innovation for their own gain?
Well, I don't think it's a question of if it's happening today. It's been happening for a long time. Who's not using OpenStack? Who's not moving things to containers? The separation of the sort of the bearer plane and the control plane in server cloud infrastructure is necessary for telcos in order to offer multi-tenanted edge application where they can control the end user experience. We look at all the development that's happening in AI and how that'll be used in managing 5G networks in the real-time management domain and also again in various applications that can only be run on a telco edge. So I think it's happening, and there's no question that the hyperscalers provide a big sort of source of innovation, not just for themselves, but for our industry as a whole, and it will be used in the telco networks, whether it gets delivered through the hyperscalers or whether it's technology that generally evolves and gets better because the hyperscalers are investing in it and then we use it more at a component level.
Thanks, Klaus, and thanks for pointing out that actually, the public cloud isn't new. We tend to assume at times this is something brand new, but actually it's been around a while, and we have been using, as a telecoms industry, we have been using this technology, as you say, OpenStack and other technologies and other innovations. We've been using it for years and years now, and we'll no doubt continue to do so. We must leave our discussion there, though. Thank you all very much for taking part in today's programme and sharing your views with us. Now, if you're watching this on day 4 of our Spotlight on 5G series, then please do stay with us and take a look at the rest of our programmes on 5G cloud. We've already looked at the 5G core, 5G RAN and edge and private 5G. And all these programs are now available to view on demand. Plus, we have lots more related content, including the latest news from MWC in the Daily Slice programme, when I'll be joined from Barcelona by my colleague Rayla Matra. Next week, we'll see the return of the After Show, our live Q&A programmes, so don't forget to send us your questions on 5G Cloud, and there's a Q&A form right here on the website. A final reminder to tune in to The Slice for the news from the last day of MWC in Barcelona. For now though, thank you for watching and goodbye.